there is this massive obsession over how much money they can make on the first transaction, right? So it's like,
Mm.
oh, like I'm not going to do a $59 new patient special. I normally get 300, you know what I mean?
Right,
But it's
right.
like, I'll tell
But
you
then you're
this,
not
like
seeing them anymore after that.
you're not seeing them anymore, and it's unbelievably selfish business.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like if I come into a Cairo and I pay $300 for an evaluation and I know what the problem is, but you're not actually incentivizing me to take action and sign up for care, there is zero value exchange, none. The value is exchanged when you actually deliver the goods, you deliver the adjustment, they start healing. So if you're only concerned about that front end exam fee, that's an unbelievably selfish way to market a company.
Welcome, Genesis Nation. I am super excited to bring this young, sharp, energetic, intelligent man, Jeff Van Kampen, with Clinic Growth Accelerators and Clinic Growth Secrets podcast. Now, we are going to keep the curse words out of this one, but if you do require or if you desire more curse words, go over to Jeff's podcast because then we rip it out in a little more direct fashion that way. So I'm super excited to bring this young man to our Genesis Nation. We've been doing some work internally. And so CGA, we're going to be calling it Clinic Growth Accelerator. And you're in marketing. So can you, your background is very different though than so as a practitioner and then someone in business in the chiropractic world for 20 years, I have I've kissed many frogs in the paid ad and advertising world, and I've rarely come up with a prince and or princess, either way. So it's been really difficult, and it seems like everyone and their mother now with Chat GPT on the back end is a marketing company or a marketing or a media agency. So before we dive into what you actually do, can you give us a background about systems engineering and how you guys formulated your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, I appreciate you having me on the show. I'm honored to be a part of such an awesome community you guys have and share some hopefully wisdom over the next 45 to 60 minutes. So Clinic Growth Accelerator is really it's really founded on two things. It's really just engineering, such as, data, processes, technology, and integrity. Those are the really two things,
Right.
right? Because if you don't have the integrity, everything else falls apart, right? And so my business partner and I, my business partner's name is Nick. We have very opposite skill sets. I'm kind of like the social bird. I like to talk. I like to interact, and he's just a systems wizard, dude. Like, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? He's the one that makes it really happen.
You keep
He's
them
the
plugged in.
Yeah, exactly. Like if it was just me, it'd be a bunch of ideas that don't get done. He's the one that actually is like, okay, how are we going to get this happen? So funny enough, we actually met in school, went to school at University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee for industrial engineering. I chose that major by going to my counselor and saying, hey, listen, like, what's the most social engineering there is? And she told me, hey, do industrial. It's kind of like,
I didn't know those two words fit together. So
I didn't either, but I needed it because I'm like, hey man, I can't be sitting behind a computer all day and just building out diagrams and stuff, you
yeah.
know? So I was like, hey, what's the most social engineering you guys got? And she's like, well, industrial is very business oriented. You work with processes, you work with operators, and you'll get a chance to like help improve the business. My parents were business owners. They owned a company for, 35 years in Madison, Wisconsin. So I'm like, okay, I like engineering, I like math, but I also love business. And I know that's what the end game looks like. So that's how I chose the major. I was like, sure, let's do it.
Awesome.
And that's how I make a lot of these big decisions in my life. I swear a lot of them they seem impulsive, but it just feels right. And I go with the intuition.
Yeah.
And so what happened is I chose that major. And then the first 2.5 years of engineering school is all generals anyway. So you have classes with all the, civil engineers, mechanical engineers, industrial, electrical. And I met a gentleman, my business partner, Nick, in a physics class. And essentially what had happened is we took a really hard exam. And then we were all out after the exam, like in the commons area, talking about the questions. Some people talking about how bad they bombed it. And I started talking with Nick, just kind of like interacting. And I was like, hey man, like he's like, what do you go to school for? And I was like, well, I'm doing industrial. He's like, well, what's that? And I was like, well, it's kind of like business engineering. He's like, that's a real thing. And I was like, yeah, dude. Like, I mean, I didn't know it either until like a couple of weeks ago. And he's
Yeah.
like, that sounds awesome. So like literally he walked away to the guidance counselor and changed his major that day. And
That's
then
awesome.
from there on out, we started having a bunch of classes together. Both found out we were really into business, both wanted to start businesses. And lo and behold, a couple of years later, we started our first company. We bought a screen printer and started making clothes.
Wow.
Our original intention was to sell them on campus, and that never really happened. We ended up creating a brand, lost money, didn't make any money in that business, but that was like our first venture into entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
which ultimately spawned the agency years later, you know?
So
So
before you go into the agency, what were like the biggest mistakes, or I would say like
love
mistakes,
it.
lessons that you learned from that first business because you started it young?
Yeah, yeah, that's the greatest question you could have asked right there. And I know the exact answer because I was literally thinking about this the other day. Okay. And so I'm reading a book. It's called Ready, Fire, Aim. Okay. If you haven't read that, it's one of the best books I've ever read on scaling businesses. And what he talks about in the very beginning of if you're building up a business, a practice from zero to $1 million, if you look at a lot of the coaches and a lot of stuff like that, they'll tell you, hey, man, like, go get a lease, go get some big overhead, go get all these systems, go get a formal LLC, get some team. But the only really thing that matters is sales,
Yeah.
product, market, fit,
Yeah.
right? And so what I learned in that venture of creating this brand of clothing, because we spent all this time on the brand, all this time on the logo, and we thought, hey, man, like once we get it perfect, it'll sell. You know what I mean? We made no money. I mean, we literally lost money in the venture. You know what I
So
mean?
in that regard, perfectionism was your enemy.
Perfectionism was the enemy, and also having a false sense of what's important at stages of the business. Because what I found is that like the problems that businesses have are less contingent on the industry that they're in, but more of the size of the organization. And so
Mm.
if you're at 0 to 1 million, you're going to have very similar problems that other businesses have going from 0 to 1 million.
Yeah.
If you're going from 1 to 10, you're going to have very similar problems, you know? And so what that taught me was that the problems that I was solving, the branding, the logo, all that stuff, it didn't matter. Because
Yeah.
when we created the agency, we literally combined our last names together in our second business and started making sales the next day. And that business was way bigger. You know what I mean? So it was just the intent of focusing on what actually mattered, which was sales.
So
Right.
that fire piece is like, okay, get it ready enough where you can just move forward fast.
Exactly. Exactly. Like get it good enough to sell and then let your market tell you how to fix it and make it better. Because you can sit here and make the perfect practice, the perfect program and all that kind of stuff in your head. And it might seem perfect to you, but the reality is that nobody cares what the market. The market is always right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
what that was the big lesson.
I borrowed something very similar from one of my son's lacrosse coaches, and I teach it to him. And he screams out hundo, HUNDO, and that
Yeah.
means like move at 100 miles an hour, and it's okay if you're going to make mistakes, but move at 100 miles an hour.
Yes,
On the field, off the field, playing every ball, every ground ball. So I love the sports analogies, and they make sense. So
for
so
sure.
that's your background. You had two businesses, and then created CGA with
Yep.
Nick.
Yep.
Why chiropractic?
Yeah, it's a good question. So kind of like even leading into like the backstory. So like when I was in high school, I was never a very athletic guy. Like I knew business was my end game. I knew that since I was little. I remember being like 4 or 5 years old, thinking like I want to have a company. Like I literally remember that because my parents did, you know.
I can picture
And
you at 4 or 5 in your shirt and tie, like the
I
same.
was like, I wasn't in my shirt and tie, but I was in my crib, like my baby crib,
Yeah,
listening to my parents build the company late at night, talking about all these problems and stuff. And like, I was probably too young to really understand a lot of it, but I knew that was where I was headed. You
dude,
know,
it's in your genomics. Like
it's tied to
social
me.
genomics had created you as a businessman, and
They
it's
did.
obvious
They.
because you're young. How old are you?
I'll be 30 this year. I'm 29
All right,
now.
great. I mean, you're a young guy, so it's like you're already like on a ramp with a great business. So,
I
um,
appreciate that.
yeah, you
But
got.
so it basically started because so chiropractic was founded because I was an advocate patient of chiropractic because I had grew up not playing sports and instead I was playing video games. And my mom always told me, she's like, you got to stand up straight. You got to stand up straight. Cause I'm always in this chair gaming, Call of Duty, you
Yeah,
know what I mean? Playing kids, winning, you know what I mean? I was good,
yeah,
going hard as I do in business, but what I suffered because I had poor posture because I spent, 10,000 hours in a chair. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Well,
So I
then
had.
you did master it though, at least on your ten
That's
thousand
right. That's right. I
hours.
got the master, dude. I was
Yeah,
like 50. I was like 5,500 in the world in kills on PS3. You know what I mean?
nice.
So I was going in, right? But I so basically by 25, I had like pretty severe mid back pain, and I mean, when you're 25, like, and you start to have your body feels like that, you're just like, dude, this isn't good. This is
Yeah,
not right, you know. So I started going to see a doc in Milwaukee who just had a huge impact on me. He uses the TRT torque release technique. It's a technique I just love. It fits my body very well. I'm not into like the crazy kind of like
yeah,
I respect every technique, but that one just fit well for me,
yeah.
and it really changed me. And That was around the time we had the agency, but we had a bunch of different clients. We had chiros, we had real estate agents, we had custom home builder, we had gym owners, and it was just so complex because every one of those businesses is different. And if
Different
you know anything
marketing.
about right, so it's hard to let when you're marketing it, like you have to know the ins and outs. You got to know how the avatar needs to be spoken to. And so we just said, hey, 2020 hit. Let's just change. Let's just cut the fat. Who are we getting great results for? And who do we feel most connected to? And the answer was chiropractors, because I was a patient and they were making a lot of money in our program. So it's like, let's just go all in, systematize it, and sell it.
Well, and you're doing a bigger service to humanity, which is pretty cool. And I know in all of our conversations that always comes up. There's integrity, and then who you're serving at large, which is humanity in our society. So you brought up a couple things, but let's, just to be specific, you are an ad agency. Is that correct?
Yeah, at our core,
Media
that's
agency. What's the right way? What's the right way to describe your company?
I would say ad for sure. I love advertising. I think that marketing is a big like idea and concept, and there's a lot of different things in marketing, copywriting, advertising, direct response kind of stuff. We're advertisers, man. Like I don't do anything on websites. I don't do anything on SEO. I mean, I don't even run Google ads, and I know that is advertising, but we're
Yeah.
just social ads,
Okay.
like
So that's
Facebook
it. So
is
any of our Genesis Nation listeners out there, that's what CGA does.
that's what
We're
CGA does.
looking for paid ads on social media, correct?
Paid ads on social media.
Not the organic side. That's a whole different arm for your business that you're going to
Yep.
build. But this is paid ads, TikTok, LinkedIn.
No LinkedIn. No
Okay.
LinkedIn.
TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram.
Yep, that's it. That's it. And
I just heard a crazy stat the other day, and I'm sure you know this. Facebook originally bought Instagram for $1 billion.
Yep.
And they're now doing $1 billion a month.
Yeah, that's insane. I believe it.
And so if you're not advertising on Instagram, you're missing the largest social media platform out there.
Right.
So tell me about direct response. I want to get into a couple of things because I want to talk about direct response. I also want to talk about, like getting ads shut down. Like how do you pass the filters? Because it seems like every day accounts are getting shut down, and that's always a concern if you're pushing the edge with marketing. So let's talk first more about ad copy and
Sure.
What you're targeting for getting in. Do you market specific for conditions or like neuropathy or treatments, decompression, things like that? How do you break it down?
Yeah, great question. So in our business, again, we keep things very, very simple as of right now, and I think it'll expand as the team expands and the organization grows. But for right now, we do social advertising for decompression and chiropractic.
Okay.
You don't have to have both to be part of the program. Like there's a lot of clinics we have that just do chiro or just do decompression, but it's very specific. It's easily duplicatable. We know we can get results for it. And the nature of how we do it is, kind of somewhat counterintuitive, right? Because if you think about like a lot of your docs listening and a lot of the people that we service, like the end game is patient lifetime value, long-term retention, right? And so there's a lot of tendency to want to be like, market chiropractic on the front end as this long-term health solution, right? Like live better, feel better, have better digestion, better sleep, which it does happen like that.
Yeah.
But the challenge is that the average consumer, they don't see chiropractic like that. If you go to 10 random people on the street and you say, what do you know about chiropractic? I can tell you what's going to come out of their mouth because I already did the survey. Back pain, neck pain, sciatica, migraines, headaches, right?
It's funny because you and I spend our time at chiropractic conferences around chiropractors. So we live and breathe and only see that lifestyle, but we have to flip our brain. And that's an important piece with any of us marketing out there and advertising. Like you must think like your avatar. And you must emote like your avatar.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's well said. And then the first thing of like any sort of direct response, any sort of advertising is relevancy, right? So like if you're not speaking to the consumer in a way that they understand the vehicle that you're trying to sell, you'll lose every time, So a good theory that we teach our docs is painkillers over vitamins, which is that like people are always going to take action to remove a pain than they are to even take their daily supplements. And I hate to say that, but it's true.
Yeah.
Like if you break your arm, you are going to search for that morphine so fast because the body you can't deal with the pain. You know what I mean? So pain's a better motivator than vitamins. What you do is you attract on the pain because it relates to them and it actually incentivizes action. And because people are in pain, they're willing to pay more to get it taken care of.
Yeah.
But then when the doctor has the good strategic sales process, like they're able to take them through a day 1, day 2, maybe even day 3, day 4, and take them and show them like, hey, look, like in this office, you're going to get rid of the pain. But the main reason you're going to be here long term is because we're going to focus on the function, that
And like,
neuroplasticity and that kind of stuff,
yeah, yeah.
And that so direct response begins by hitting them with some sort of opportunity to come into the business, right?
Now,
And there's
are you just advertising for cash practices or insurance-based practices also, or you have across the
yeah,
gamut?
a little bit of both. That's a real good
Okay.
question. A little bit of both. We do, I would say probably 65-70% of our providers that we work with right now are all cash, and then the
Okay.
rest are a mix, right?
Great.
And I think that insurance is it has its place and time and stuff like that. I just think like in some markets it makes a lot of sense because the insurance is good. There's a lot of blue collar, the
Yeah.
corporates that provide, you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
good in some places, but that's probably the mix we have, you know?
Okay. Great. And is the advertising different for the means of pay, or it's just getting them in the door is the same concept all the time, no matter what?
It's really almost an identical concept, you know? And because like at the end of the day, like the whatever happens in the back end is different than what needs to be required in the front end, you know? So like things I'm looking at are like acceptable acquisition cost, which is like how you end up like pricing like your front end thing, you know?
Yeah.
So like a lot of people make the mistake because a lot of docs, and this may, you know, hit it at home and maybe even not be fun to hear for some people listening, but it's the reality is that like there is this massive obsession over how much money they can make on the first transaction, right? So it's like,
Mm.
oh, like I'm not going to do a $59 new patient special. I normally get 300, you know what I mean?
Right.
But it's
Right.
like, I'll tell
But
you
then you're
this,
not
like
seeing them anymore after that.
you're not seeing them anymore, and it's unbelievably selfish business
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, like if I come into a Cairo and I pay $300 for an evaluation and I know what the problem is, but you're not actually incentivizing me to take action and sign up for care, there is zero value exchange, none. The value is exchanged when you actually deliver the goods, you deliver the adjustment, they start healing. So if you're only concerned about that front end exam fee, that's an unbelievably selfish way to market a company.
When it creates just a top heavy engine, and it burns you out if you're just burning and churning the new patients and not keeping them. The practice doesn't grow. So
100%.
talk to me about compliance and things like that, because I know that Facebook and, well, Facebook, Instagram, they have restrictions on what you can and cannot say and things like
Yeah.
that. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a real good point there. The compliance is such that when you write ad copy, kind of getting back into like a little bit of direct response, when you write like ad copy, I couldn't write something that says, do you have back pain, neck pain, sciatica, or something like that? You can't make assumptions about the avatar. That's why weight loss is really hard on Facebook because it's impossible to write ad copy without assuming somebody's overweight. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's really hard to do. Like I've tried it a lot of different times, and I'm sure there's successful people out there. I haven't found that game yet. So instead of being like, do you have these symptomatology lists? It's more of a statement. This symptom, back pain, neck pain, this, that, and the other are no fun or doesn't have to be the norm. You know what I mean? So you're
Yeah.
more so making statements that are not assumptive to the avatar, but
Okay.
are still allowing for that relatability of somebody who's reading that. You know what I
What
mean?
it stimulates thought, and
Exactly.
it really stimulates action, which is a click.
100%.
So
And
without giving away the secret sauce, the whole thing, but patient is technically or ultimately clicking the ad and then getting directly to the office through landing pages, or are they calling directly to the office, or are you managing leads for us offices, or like how does that whole process work?
I can give you the whole process. I mean, I'm a big believer in giving away the whole farm on these kind of shows, you know? So if you listen to my show, I'll give away the farm because at the end of the day, like if you get value out of it and you execute it yourself, you're still going to think of us, man, you know? So
Yeah,
let's talk about the whole game.
totally.
So essentially like in a marketing systems engineering, it is a system. It all works together. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's also why I get mad when people say, oh, Facebook ads don't work. Well, it's like, come on, dude, that's one part of the system. Like what part did it break off? You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So when the every component of the system has a job, right? So the job of an ad is not to just ultimately like close the patient, hyper qualify, all that kind of stuff. The job of an ad is to get a relevant click,
Yes.
not just a click, a relevant click, right? Meaning that it's relevant towards the solution that you hope to provide on the back end product, right? So the ad gets the relevant click, takes them to a landing page. They put in their first name, last name, phone number, and email. And the system that we use, after they give us their info on the lead page, they'll go to a booking page. They'll get an opportunity to book an initial appointment time. So all of our partners provide like new patient hours, and then we'll get people to schedule at those hours. And then that enters the system as what's known as a booking request. And the booking request is just an individual who said, hey, I'm interested enough to at least pre-select a time, but then all of our partners must qualify that person over the phone. So the booking is requested, but it's only confirmed once they've been spoken to on the phone by someone on the team. And that's just for the initial quality, because we always say that if somebody can't take 5 minutes on the phone with you, then like, why even invite them to hang out? You know what I mean?
I get it. Now, do you find, obviously there are so many variables that can go wrong. That was great what you mentioned. I love, Jeff, I just love your approach to this. Like I can feel the industrial engineering brain come out into the way you put these systems into play. It just makes the conversation just very logical. There's obviously a lot of variables that can go wrong, from ad copy to just, the mechanics of the technology. Do you find that the phone answering portion, is that often a variable that needs to be worked on within your customers?
Yes, it is. So like can be errors at any point in the system. So like if I see an ad is not getting a click, I'll change the ad. We'll change the ad copy. We'll make it so it's a better creative, right? Okay, the ad's getting the click, but they're not jumping in. They're not giving us their lead info. We'll change the headline on the landing page to make it more benefit driven, that kind of stuff. So it's all the testing in the front end. And then when we first started the business, we were super good at lead gen. We were really good at generating leads, but we couldn't get anybody to get them in the door. And we just thought that we were trash. We just thought the leads were terrible,
Yeah.
But then we had one client, and I'm not afraid to name him because he changed our life. His name was Dr. Jim Marshall. He was out of Florida. I mean, this guy made a boatload of money with our system. And like he was the first one to do it. And what I realized is that a lot of people just didn't have the sales game. They didn't have the phone call, they didn't have the scripts, they didn't have the tonality. And so over time, we've engineered the program to teach everybody, whether it's a doc or a CA or an office manager, how to take the phone call. If they want, how to take prepayment over the phone, what to say, what tonality to say it, downloadable scripts to have in front of them. And then what we do is we just created a system of follow-up. So every person must be followed up with for a minimum of 3 business days with a phone call, text, and email. That means 3 days of calls, 3 days of text, 3 days of email. And then in our accountability calls we do every single week, we hold them to that standard.
Well, that's I'm glad you said that. So because you had some I define integrity as workability, right? Words and action matching one another, and you held to the integrity of your system. This is a shameless plug because we're integrating with CGA, as we're working on the back end tech. So all these things will be integrated with your company. If if one of our Genesis customers decides to, or clients works with CGA, you're going to have things integrated within the system. But what was that the requirements that you said we had discussed? There were some hard no's, right? There was like a baseline that you said, I require, like you have to meet with your clients and train them a certain way. What were those requirements?
Yeah. So, I mean, in any partnership, whether it's with you, obviously like you guys is kind of like on the software side, or maybe like a coach that we partner with or something, like we had a good relationship with, obviously with Dr. Zano, who was a big high volume guy for a very long time. But there are like non-negotiables for us, like in the program, in order for us to deliver the goods, if you would.
Yeah.
So some of those non-negotiables is we got to have complete transparency on the data. So we got to be able to see, like with our systems, all the leads, cost per lead, cost per booking, to be able to understand percentage wise and cost wise. Like those are non-negotiables. We got to have our systems run that. The other one is just accountability. So like within our partnerships with people, like we're meeting with them every single week, one-on-one, for a minimum of the first 8 to 10 weeks of the program, right? So when somebody comes in, we train them in the back end with some modules, but then we work with them on a weekly basis to make sure they're actually doing what they need to do, right? And it really is accountability, but it's also just like mutual visibility, so that we can talk about what we're seeing, so that they don't feel like a closed curtain. They don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And then we can also get visibility on what they're doing to make sure that they're having the proper actions to success, So it's a true, I tell people all the time, it's old school business principles of partnership and transparency, but works pretty dang well,
Yeah. I mean, it's been working for centuries, right?
Right.
So all of your clients are having a separate CRM and client relationship management tool that they're able to use and manage all the leads from there.
Exactly. Yep. So they all have like their own like custom like login. They can see their whole pipeline. They can message people within that platform as well. So we have visibility of the conversations. And that's a big part of it, is that like we just needed visibility over what people are saying to make sure they're doing the work. Because if I jump on, because you're really managing the system, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we jump on a call with somebody and they're like, oh yeah, I'm making all these calls, and then we start clicking through leads and there's no text being sent, there's no calls being sent, like we're both looking at the same thing here.
Well,
I'm
it's
not the
that
back.
transparency and accountability. You're able to hold them accountable. So some of your clients, I'm sure, like to just set it and forget it, and they look at the bottom line. I would imagine that some, they want to participate in ad copy and things like that. Is that something that's available for your clients, or do you have that kind of relationship, or is it just like, okay, we got this stuff, you sit back and do your end, I do my end?
Yeah, that's a good point. There is a little bit of customization to it. I wouldn't say it's like there's not a lot though. You know, things that can be tailored a little bit are the nature of the offer. So like a lot of times, like if somebody, an example would be if somebody's not doing in-house X-rays, we're obviously not going to include X-rays in the offer stack. You
Right.
know,
Of course.
now there are just like realities that need to be accepted. Is that like a lot of times you get on an onboarding call and you say, hey, this is what we're going to run the new patient special at in terms of price point. And as you can imagine, people just genuinely like don't like the price because they're used to getting a couple $100 for it.
Yeah.
But there's just optimal sales prices based on market constraints, you know? So if you have a market that's totally used to seeing these different offers, and all of a sudden you run an offer that's, 2 or 3 times the size, you're just going to get a lot less response, you know? And if you're willing to accept that, that's fine. A lot of times we just don't like to accept that because there's no money and value exchange in that first transaction. So we'll try to get them to run it lower with the intention to sell bigger programs in the back end, you know?
Okay.
So there is a little bit of customization. All the ad copies like custom to the doc, says their name, has their photos, all that kind of stuff. But the nature of how the copy is written and how it's positioned, I've just got too much data in the back end to even consider having somebody just like emotionally change it, to be
Yeah.
honest, you know?
Got it. Well, I love that it's data driven. In God we trust. All others must bring data.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yeah.
how I operate for sure,
But
man, you
you're
know?
you're you're a systems guy for sure. So, what makes your company? Because this is, you're in a battlefield with advertising companies, obviously.
It's a
Uh,
bloody market for sure.
yeah, yeah. What makes you different? Like, what makes you rise to the top?
I think I think it's the background. I think a lot of it is the integrity in the systems, because I think anybody can run Facebook ads. I don't think because like Facebook is just an eyeball buyer. That's all that is. So that's why I get frustrated. People are like, "Oh, Facebook doesn't work." It's like, dude, you don't work, man. Like your ads don't work. You know what I mean? Like blame
Yeah,
yourself, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think for us, it's the accountability is big. Like I don't know a lot of other agencies in this space that do weekly accountability, right? I also don't know a lot of other agencies that have a full training back end program that teaches how to qualify over the phone, take payment, but then also how to pre-frame and sell for the docs that need to learn that process.
That,
So I,
yeah,
so I think it becomes like very encompassing, but I think the thing that separates us the most is just the integrity, because most agencies play what's called the set and forget strategy,
yeah.
meaning that if I work with you, Dr. Brian, you pay us a nominal amount of money. That's why their fees are usually cheap. They place the ad and they forget about it. Like
Yeah.
I'll look at accounts that like I'll be on a call with a doc and he'll be like, "Oh, I'm running ads." I'll be like, "Dude, your ads haven't been changed since January. Do you know how
Mm.
much extra money you're paying?" Because if you don't change your
On
ads
an
frequently,
ad that's not working. Yeah.
no, exactly. And like, even if the ad does work a little bit, you're still overpaying because over time, like, if you think about Facebook, they want people to be on the platform. That's what they
Yeah.
want. They want viewership because the more viewers, they can serve more ads, right? So if they see you running the same ad for a very long time, they're going to start to charge you more money to serve that ad because
That's a great little tidbit.
it's a nugget, and not a lot of people know
Yeah.
that. And so, like when you're evaluating agencies, one of the main questions you want to ask them is, "How often are you going to change my ads?" Okay, and if they don't even have an answer to that, you part ways right there. If they do have an answer, it better be weekly or bi-weekly, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're spending that, a couple $1,000 a month, like there's a metric called a CPM, which is like a cost per 1,000 eyeballs for an easy kind of understanding. And what happens is that if you run the same ad over and over and over,
Yeah.
people see that ad.
Yeah.
Facebook's like, well, if they keep seeing this, they're going to get sick of it and they're not going to hang out on the platform. So you can keep running this ad if you want, but we're going to charge you more to do it. right?
Very, very interesting. That's a nugget right there. If there's any we shared a lot of good information. You shared a lot of good information so far, but that's huge, man. Thank you.
That's very tactical, you know. And I think that's why a lot of people think that like you can just like they think the job's very easy, you know, like, oh, you guys just place ads and that's all you do is place it. Well, it's like you don't see how often we're on chat support, you don't see how many times ads are getting flagged, you don't
Wait,
see
you
all the
can
testing.
actually is it like do you actually talk to Facebook? Because that like because you're an
Y-
agency?
Uh, not quite. So
All right,
Facebook,
good. I'm glad.
face,
I didn't think you were that much of a unicorn, bro. But
I have to say we're getting close though. So
all right.
Facebook basically has like this criteria. Most people don't meet it, but you've got to spend $1 million over a course of a year inside of one ad account, not a bunch of ad accounts, inside
Oh,
one ad account
got it.
to get like a dedicated rep.
Okay.
Or you have to be spending, I think it was, I can't remember exactly. It changes all the time. But last time I checked, it was like over like 40 or 50,000 bucks a month in one ad account. Right.
Okay. Got it.
So like we're close to the threshold. We're not quite at a point we have like a dedicated rep, but like we have like they give you like a chat support and you can get in touch with them. It's not a good time. I'm not going to sit here and
No,
say it's
no, no,
fun.
no. That's an industry secret I was always curious about. So there is a Mendoza line that you can cross or go above or below,
There is for
right?
sure.
Right. That's
Because
interesting.
we obviously like we're in Cairo, but like our skill is in like being able to run profitable ads. And
Yeah.
so we've invested in like a lot of different programs of guys that, you know, are spending 10, 15 million bucks a month in ad. You know, I mean, guys that are spending real coin on some,
Yeah.
but so like those are the guys that have the relationships with Facebook. So if you learn from them, they can tell you how to optimize your stuff without having to spend that all yourself yet. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That's awesome.
So you can
Well,
get
that's
dedicated.
good to know that you have those relationships because that knowledge is filtering down to us, the
Yeah,
practitioner.
exactly. And that's exactly why I think like, you know, it's like our retention has been so good in the program because it's just like we just look at the ads every day. We make the best decision with the data we have. We don't rely on Facebook data. That's always inaccurate. All of our data is hard coded. That means that like we know exactly what the cost per lead is. We know exactly what the cost per booking is. We don't got to rely on Facebook to tell you faulty leads and all that because Facebook data is wonky. So people are like, oh, ever since they updated the cookies thing and all that tracking, everything's wrong. Well, yeah, after relying on Facebook, you're gonna have bad data. But our data has always been hard coded, so like we literally notice nothing when that
Mm,
change happened. You know?
that's cool.
Yeah,
Awesome. Awesome.
those are all like little nerd tidbits, but you know.
Totally. But I mean, that's what Nick is for, right?
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
he sits in the back.
You
So
nailed.
if you interrupt his coding, then there's a problem in the business.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
totally.
Never interrupt never interrupt the wizard. You know.
No, no. So you shared some really good nuggets, man. I mean, the little tidbits, but from a 10,000 foot view, I'm looking at your company itself with integrity, accountability, transparency. I mean, that sets you apart above and beyond any other media agency that I've talked to. And you're not just getting shoved off to some young kid out of college who's your ad rep, because I've been with those companies too. And
Right.
it takes a week to get back in touch. And so and it's awesome that you're constantly tweaking the ads and making things work if they're not working. Um, give us I don't have you had like a really cool like fire question at me, and I don't have one of those because this is
That's all good.
a podcast officially, but it's an interview.
Yeah.
But just from a general perspective, actually not a general perspective, from an industrial engineer's perspective, what are 3 tips you can give us chiropractors as far as process is concerned? Let's put technology aside, let's put people aside. Those things are critical, right?
Yeah.
But you're a process guy.
Yep.
Shoot it at me.
So in general, you want to talk all business or just marketing?
No, let's talk about. Well, we got time, so let's do
Do the whole
marketing, then let's
business.
do business.
All right. Yeah. Well, I think like in general, like kind of like processes for marketing is you have to understand like what level you're at. So people will come and they'll basically, because like I think what part of like why I'm so like get so involved in this is because like I literally built our company off the same strategies our partners. So, like we went from a 10 by 10 sweatbox sunroom, sweaty in the winter, sweaty in the summer because there was no AC and it was the hot box in the winter,
Yeah,
propping up our laptops on beer cans so they wouldn't overheat and all that kind of stuff. Like literally, these is the truth. And in that time, like we started running ads and it changed the game for us. So when I think about like processes, I think you have to understand where you're at in the game. So
mm,
like I have a lot of guys that come to me and they're like, well, dude, I don't want to market my way like the way you guys do. Like I'm the Ritz-Carlton. Like my fees are the Ritz-Carlton. It's like, dude, you don't have the capital to be like that. The Ritz-Carlton, like they're like, oh, I'm the Nike of my hometown. It's like, no, dude, like Nike started one-to-one selling. They started one-to-one, handshake to handshake. And over the last X amount of years, it became a big brand. You've had your company for 5 months, dude. So like from a marketing standpoint, the process is start with direct response. Okay. Start with direct response advertising, because what you're going to do is you're going to get people that are hot right now that are ready to buy right away, but you're also going to build a list. And that list is going to become an asset for you throughout the whole course of your practice. Because if I spend, let's say, $30,000 on chiropractic Facebook ads, right? Like you're going to have a big list of people that are local to your business that then you can re-engineer different marketing campaigns to: email marketing, text marketing, cold call, outbound, right? So the first process with marketing is like, understand where you're at. You're not the Ritz-Carlton. And like you might become, and that your prices might be the highest in town, but that doesn't mean that you have the capital and the back end and the long term that it takes to build the Ritz-Carlton brand to start doing that today. So you got to first begin by like looking, if you admire brands like the Ritz-Carlton and Nike, don't look at how they operate today. Look at how they operate when they started. That's a big mistake that people make, you know? So that's kind of like my first kind of thought on like marketing processes. In business, I think the biggest gap I see in our like consulting relationships is just not having a consistent process of entry. Meaning that when somebody comes into practice, you greet them differently. The day one's a little bit different. The day two is a little bit different. Like you got to systematize everything, because like whatever you can't track, you leave the chance. You know what I mean?
Right. And
so
each one of those variables, if it's on a checklist or wherever it is, you can pinpoint where the problem occurs.
Yeah, exactly.
For example, if someone giving an office tour is consistently in a bad mood and not giving the tour properly, you know where to pinpoint and change quickly.
Yes,
so you're
exactly.
saying have every single thing systematized and in a process, from like checking new patients into doing re-exams to teaching rehab exercises, all of it.
100%. Because if you don't have the process and everything's up to random, like kind of like chance, it's impossible to identify bottlenecks. Because that's what business is. Business is like looking at the whole organization, asking yourself right now where the current bottleneck is. And there's only one. People might be like, oh, my bottleneck is sales and marketing and team. It's like, no, it's not, dude. What's your main bottleneck? And fix that, right? But if you don't have a process, you can't even identify those bottlenecks to begin. You know what I mean? So it's just having that data and insight, you know?
Love it, man. Love it. Well, dude, because you were throwing the dude word around and you're just a dude, man.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, I appreciate that.
And I like that.
Keep it casual.
And we just keep building a good relationship here. So I really admire your intelligence, your hustle, your grit, and your passion. And I'm excited to be integrating with you with Genesis and doing business together. And
yes,
really excited to share Jeff and CGA with Genesis Nation. So we'll put all your stuff down below, and we'll show people how to connect to you. No problem, that's easy. But thank you so much, man. This was awesome. Very informative.
man. You're very welcome. I'm honored to do it. I would love to do it anytime. I just enjoy sharing the wisdom and kind of the lessons we've learned along the way. We've got a lot more to learn, but as we build the journey from 7 to 8 figures, I'll be sharing the lessons along the way, and I'm honored to share them here today.
Right on. And make sure you catch Jeff on Clinic Growth. That was a tough one. Clinic Growth Secrets.
Yep.
For the more R-rated. Well, I don't necessarily. Well, there's curse words are available. He just lays it down with his speed, grit, honor, and intelligence. So right on, man. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it, Dr. Brian. Thanks for having me today.
Got it.